Okay, guys, today is the day that we're going to finish up our story about Pocahontas. Remember that it's a true story, but it still is telling us in a sequence of events of the way that things actually happened. Okay, so let's look back. The first day we read, the Native Americans saw the ships coming, right? They sent some scouts out and they met the settlers, and Pocahontas really liked the settlers, even though a lot of people didn't, and she helped them a lot. She helped them learn how to grow corn and all that kind of stuff. And then we learned yesterday that that Powhatan actually took John Smith as prisoner. And while he was prisoner, they decided they were going to treat him as a guest, but then Powhatan decided he was going to kill him. And Pocahontas saved his life by saying, "No, don't do it." And she changed her father's mind. After that, John Smith taught Pocahontas a lot of English, and they got along for a little while, the settlers and the Indians, or Native Americans. And then later, some more settlers came. This is where we ended off yesterday. And they started taking even more land. And the book told us that Powhatan got angry. He didn't like that. So it sounds like maybe the peace is about to end. All right, so today, as I read the rest of our story, I want you to listen really closely about a character you're going to meet, or a person. He was a real person named Thomas, and that's who I want you to listen for today when we finish up our story. Pocahontas, written by Karen Jenner. Well, let's finish our story and see what happens. Winter came again. Captain Smith wanted to trade English goods for food. He camped near Powhatan's village. Pocahontas heard her father plan to attack the camp. Pocahontas waited until everyone was asleep. Then she walked through the wind and snow to warn her friend. "You've saved me again, Pocahontas," said Smith. Pocahontas made a big decision, didn't she? She decided to warn John Smith. What would you do if you were in her place? Would you have gone against your father to go warn John Smith? Touch your nose if you would have been brave enough. Many seasons passed. Pocahontas grew into a young woman and moved to a new village. She heard that her friend John Smith had died. The Indians and the settlers continued to fight. One day, an English ship docked near the village. Pocahontas went on board to visit. The ship's captain, Captain Argall, would not let her leave. She was kidnapped. Why do you think that Pocahontas thought it was safe to go on the English ship? She had been friends with a lot of settlers, didn't she? She really trusted them. And I guess she didn't need to trust these settlers, did she? Why do you think that they kidnapped her? There's a bunch of reasons they could have, right? Maybe they thought that she was there to hurt them. Maybe they thought that they could get some money from her father. Or maybe they thought they were doing her a favor. A lot of people back then thought that if they took the Native Americans from their homes and taught them the English ways, they were better off, which we know now isn't true. Now, before I show you the next page in the picture, I'm going to tell you that Pocahontas is no longer wearing Native American clothing. She's learning to dress like a settler. As I read, try to make a picture of what you think it's going to look like in your mind, and then I'll show you the picture. Captain Argall took Pocahontas to a new town near Jamestown. Pocahontas learned to act like a settler. She wore heavy cloth dresses and a cap on her head. All right, do you have a picture in your mind? Let's see what it looks like. All right, here we go. We can see Pocahontas in her new settler clothes. They look really different than the Native American clothes she wore, right? Native Americans wore clothes made out of deer skin and animals that they had killed, and here she's wearing a big cloth dress, covers her all the way up, and a cap on top of her head. She went to church with her new friends. They baptized her and gave her the English name Rebecca. How do you think that Pocahontas' father, Powhatan, felt about all this? That she was going to a new church with new friends, she had a new name. I bet he probably wasn't very happy that they were changing her so much. If we look here, we can see another sidebar picture, and it's about church, the settlers' church, and it tells us that church was very important to the settlers, and Pocahontas was baptized into the Christian religion. All of the settlers liked Pocahontas, especially a man named John Rolfe. Pocahontas wanted to marry him. Powhatan made peace with the settlers to celebrate his daughter's marriage. It was the best wedding present Pocahontas could have. Pocahontas and her husband had a baby named Thomas. They all sailed across the ocean to visit England. What was the wedding present that the author's talking about? Because I don't see any gifts, do you? It was that her father came and was kind and respectful, that the Indians and the settlers had a moment of peace, even though they weren't necessarily getting along right then. They did that out of respect and as a present to Pocahontas on her wedding day. We read that Pocahontas is going to be going to England. What do you think the people there are going to think of her? She looks a lot different, right? I don't know. We'll have to find out. What do you think she's going to think of England? Let's read and find out. What do you think of England? John Rolfe asked his wife. There are so many people, Pocahontas replied. The people stared at Pocahontas. They had never seen an Indian before. She remembered how she had stared when she first saw the settlers, so she just smiled. King James and Queen Anne thought Pocahontas was charming. So how do we know which person here is the king, is King James? It's the one sitting on the throne, right? And we know it's the man on the throne because he's a king, not a queen. Pocahontas had been in England for several months when she became ill. One day she had a surprise visitor. It was Captain Smith. You're alive, gasped Pocahontas. Alive and well, Smith replied. You must get well too. Sadly, Pocahontas did not get better. She was only 21 years old when she died. Pocahontas helped to bring peace and friendship between the settlers and Indians in America. It's very sad that she died so young, isn't it? But is it really a sad ending to her story? Pocahontas really influenced a bunch of people and kept the peace between a bunch of people who were always trying to fight. She lived such a great life, didn't she? And we still remember her today. A memorial. This statue stands in Gravesend, England, where Pocahontas is buried. She is remembered as a brave and clever girl. All right, so let's summarize kind of what we read about today. So I remember that we were reading and Pocahontas went onto a settler ship and they kidnapped her. And they dressed her up like a settler woman and they baptized her and gave her a new name. Do you remember her new name? It was Rebecca. And she married an English man and she went to England to visit all of the people over there and even met the king. But then I remember the sad ending was that she died, didn't she? That was really sad. All right, so let's put all of that into this portion of our book from today. The first part that we just talked about, it's a lot easier when we talk about it first, isn't it? Is that she went on that ship and they kidnapped her, right? All right, and so then what happened? Look at all of our pictures. What would you say happened next? Which one? Point to it on your screen. They dressed her up, right? Do you remember that, where we had to imagine what she looked like? And here she was in the settler clothes. But she ended up making a lot of friends with the settlers, and she married someone named John Rolfe. That's who we talked about. He was from England. And they had a son together named Thomas. And they went over to England to meet everybody, and they even met the king. This picture got all kinds of wonky, didn't it? They met the king and the queen. Okay, so there they are. And then she died really young, didn't she? But they still have that statue of her today. That was such a good story. I enjoyed every single part of it from the beginning all the way to the end. I like it, I think I've told you that before. I think I like it more than even the Disney movie Pocahontas. What about you?